And that takes us to Sean. Sean, if you could share a little bit about yourself, education background, all that fun stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll start with that. I'm a first generation college student as well. So yeah, we're there's a theme here. Um, I graduated high school early. I took an early option in my high school and graduated in the 11th grade and entered the
Wow.
workforce, kind of based on life needs, and I worked my way all the way up to mailroom manager, and I realized that with my my schooling and kind of my experience, that was about as high as I was going to get,
Mm.
and I moved to Hawaii in 1991 actually to become a chef. I had done research into culinary institutes, and the institute in San Francisco was $10,000 a semester. $10,000,
Oh
and
my
this was in
goodness.
1991. So $10,000 a semester was about half as much as I made every year in my job then, and it was a 2-year program. So I was looking at like $40,000
Oof.
investment to become a chef at a good culinary institute, and the New York, what is it, the CIA in New York, that was another one of those big ones. It was even more expensive, and I looked around a few smaller ones, and a family member lived in Hawaii, and kind of put that put that in my ear, put it in my brain, that KCC had a culinary program, and so I came and I visited Hawaii for a week, visited a family member, and saw the institute, and thought, wow, this is awesome. Okay,
Mm.
Hawaii, yeah. And I packed up everything, sold everything, moved to Hawaii within like 3 or 4 months. I was
Wow.
back in Hawaii, ready to become a chef, and being a first generation, I did all my research as much as I could, and went to register for courses, and it was a deal. It was $15 a credit back then. $15 a credit. You remember back in those days, back in early 90s,
Yes,
$15
it
a
was it
credit.
was in the two-digit realm.
Yeah, that was great for me because that was about how much money I had when I moved to Hawaii after transitioning.
Yeah.
San Francisco is an expensive city
Yes, it
also,
is.
so but in to my dismay, as I was filling out the application, and back then everything was hard, paper based. Everything was standing in lines and meeting that person behind the plexiglass window, right, giving the form, and the person looked at my application and said, "Okay, let me see your residency documents."
Oh.
And I, what? Wait, what? My what? And she explained to me residency and said, "Okay, well then, okay, since you don't have residency, the credits, the cost will be $30, or 30. It was like $35, 30 for $40. It was about 2.5 times as much as resident tuition, right? Which is what it is now, right?
Sounds about right.
The
Yes.
non-resident tuition was 35, maybe it was $45. Anyway, that was just beyond, like, I didn't have that much money for a full-time student. I couldn't pay 30 something dollars a credit. I could pay $15 a credit. I had that money set aside. But if I had spent the rest of the money, I probably wouldn't have like eaten for a month or something. I wouldn't have had money to
Mm.
that money that I had set. Anyway, I did a few other things, bounced around in Hawaii, kept working, and eventually reached the same kind of ceiling in
Mm.
Hawaii. And when I did that, when I hit that ceiling, it was I was a cab driver here in Hawaii, and I was sitting in a stall waiting for a call. Looked over at the cab driver next to me, and he was probably in his 50s, and he'd been driving his cab for 30 years since he was in his 20s, and he was just kind of lamenting on, life and, being a cab driver. And it just hit me like a wave.
Huh.
Wow, I've got to do something. I'm going to be just like him. And I was in my mid-20s. So I was like, wow, I've got to change my life. And I went back to KCC. And at that point, I was a resident and started taking classes, and I never stopped. I finished my AA degree. I transferred to Manoa, got my BA, went straight into my master's. And as soon as I was done, I had already met the ESOL program coordinator before Tony. And I emailed him back and said, "Hey, Mr. Noji, I got my degree finally." And he said, "Wow, perfect timing. We need lectures. Go put in your application." And I did, and easy transition for me, straight from graduate school back home to KCC, where I've been for the last 16 years. So that is the long story, Sheldon.
That is an amazing story, and I think
Yeah.
it probably resonates with a lot of your students too. They're probably in a similar situation.
I try to remember that, I try to remember that when I'm getting a little stressed out about, the students' progress or them not submitting work. I have to remind myself, they're struggling just like I did, and they're trying to figure things out, and helps me to give them a little bit more of a break. But yes, I do talk about that with my students, when they're struggling, and I let them know that I'm not coming from a place of a lack of empathy. I've been there, and so yeah. But many of them, in our ESOL program, they are struggling with things that I never had to struggle with. I never had to compete in a society where my first language was different, right? And
Yeah.
many of my students have obstacles that I didn't have. So, yeah.
So share with us, like what can you offer to our listeners and viewers that are maybe considering transitioning into Kapi olani Community College, be it themselves or even students or clients that they serve?
Okay, well, let me share my screen, and we'll talk about the program that I coordinate at KCC, the Second Language Teaching Program. I coordinate a small program called the Second Language Teaching Program, SLT Program. And we are a smallish program, and I'm the main instructor. There are two of us within the program, and I'm also the program coordinator and advisor. Let's talk about the SLT program. The SLT program is a teacher training program that is an outgrowth of ESOL program pedagogy. As we developed our program, as Tony said, it's a 30-year-old program. In the first 10 years, the pedagogy of the program really was solidified, and we centered around content-based learning as our main pedagogical focus. And as Tony also explained, we focus on language development with an emphasis on writing. And that basis within the ESOL program really formed our philosophy of teaching. When I was asked to create this program about 15 years ago, it was in response to needs locally within the DOE and within the UH system to try to get more language teachers trained within the state. And so the SLT program was a result of this, result of looking at the ESOL program pedagogy and thinking about how we could operationalize this into a teacher training program, and then looking at the needs of the DOE. As we were developing the SLT program, ESOL program faculty for a number of years had already started dabbling in teacher training efforts internationally and locally. but we hadn't really gone about it systematically. So the SLT program was a result of this. Really looking at UH and DOE student and workforce needs was our main goal.
Mm.
So our program description, we prepare students with knowledge, skills, and strategies that are necessary to work effectively with language learners in various classroom settings, including public and private, from pre-K to 12 to adult education, both locally and abroad. So we have a pretty broad mission here. While our emphasis is local, we don't limit our students, of course, to just teaching within our local DOE context. Our strategies and our pedagogical approach is really appropriate for a variety of settings. So some of our students do want to travel and teach abroad, like Tony did, taught for years in Japan. Many of our students have those connections with family or their heritage, and they want to travel and go teach right in those locations. And we really encourage that kind of that broad-based experience, right? We try to get students to think real broadly. However, we do emphasize the local, teaching locally, and we start that from the very beginning. As students enroll into our program in the first semester as a freshman, they're
So,
already starting to get experience.
so I have a question, Sean. So,
Mhm.
what started the push to train DOE teachers?
Well, so that's our second bullet point here.
Oh,
It is, and what started that push was unfortunately, I think, data within the DOE that showed at that time that ESOL or ELL students were not performing very well.
mm,
They weren't graduating in high numbers 15 years ago. They were not transitioning to college in very high numbers. Many of them were dropping out in high numbers.
mm,
So the attrition rates were high, the retention rates were low, the
mm,
college going rate was low. And it was because there was a lack of emphasis within the state DOE to have trained people in this position for working with ELs.
yeah.
That is totally changed in the last 5 years, especially under new
Mm.
DOE leadership and DOE focus. ELs are in a much, much better position than they were when I started doing this 15 years ago.
Like I
But
was sharing with Tony earlier, I did just a blanket check on some stats at our feeder high schools, and like Kamiki High School and Farrington, their ELL population are like 18%, which seems kind of high, and so I think you're right. I think seems like there was a call to support students, and seems like they are addressing these things, so it's kind of neat. But in your
yeah,
mind, do you feel like the immigrant population is going to keep on growing?
well, all projections have shown that by 2050, the immigrant student population in the U.S. overall will outnumber
Mm,
the local, or the local context.
yeah,
As an aggregate, that is the projection. Um,
yeah,
if things are still, I'm not sure in the last 4 years if that projection is still going in the same direction. I
right,
assume that it's going in the same direction, but maybe not quite as steep as it was.
right,
But I have no doubt that that will continue uh,
yeah,
to continue in that direction. Yeah, so the number of ELs are going to keep increasing.
mm-hmm,
Their needs are going to remain,
yeah,
and it's our job to we kind of joke in ESL part of our job in ESL is to work ourselves out of a job, right? In a weird way, right? You know,
Yes.
we want ESL students to not need us, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but they do, right? And
Yes.
so we're here to serve them when they need us. But part of our overall philosophy is that we hope that we can provide them with enough support so they don't need the lower levels of intervention, right?
That's
Because
true.
we know that when students persistently need support services, and when they need those, you know, beginning levels of support, they are less and less and less effective the longer they are in
Mm.
the system. The longer they have been getting support, the less likely it is that they will persist and be successful.
Yeah.
So yeah, we started.
Okay.
We also started from the very beginning, focusing on providing not only this program for our freshman student population, you know, these high school to college or these returning adults who are, you know, seeking their first college degrees, but we also recognize that our pedagogy is needed by the DOE.
Hmm.
As I said, when we first started developing the program, we developed it with that in mind. And so we immediately started thinking, how can we offer our courses to current DOE teachers? And that has taken a little bit of a while to build up,
Hmm.
but later on I'll share with you what we're doing currently, which is really awesome in that
Okay.
way.
Okay. Sounds good.
Um, we are a student-centered program. We like to think ourselves as a fully student-centered. Student learning is our priority. When students join our program, they focus on the language of their choice. Although ESL and, you know, oftentimes, you know, second language programs focus on English, many of our students do speak other languages. You mentioned, you know, this earlier with Tony. Students have their first languages and they go home and they go into their jobs and they speak their first languages. And in the best situation, we are developing bilingual or multilingual students.
Mm.
And there's no reason why we can't do that. In fact, within our state constitution, we have 2 official languages, and we encourage as a state students to speak Hawaiian and English, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and so we have this history of multilingualism in Hawaii, and the second language teaching program really embraces this. We teach about second language learning through the context of English, but that is not the only language. This should be the medium of instruction. If students want to learn how to teach Hawaiian, then we encourage them to take our program along with Hawaiian coursework at the college. If they want to teach Japanese, take SLT courses along with Japanese courses to develop their skills. If their first language already is Korean or Chinese,
Mm.
then they just need to develop that academically, right? And so we
Right.
have pathways for them to continue their learning in their first language, right?
Hmm.
Which is an issue with many of our immigrant students. They immigrate and then kind of their first language kind of plateaus. Their first language stops developing.
Mm.
And if you think about it, it makes sense. They've developed their first language in their home country through their schooling, and so they've actually developed academic language in their first language, right? In their
Yeah.
home country, they move here, and their academic language in their home country stops, right?
Mm.
That's why we have this kind of phenomenon where sometimes you have, say, a Japanese student who immigrates when maybe he's in the 6th grade
Mm.
or 5th grade. And then in high school, he speaks Japanese, but when he speaks with a Japanese speaker, he's limited with what he can talk about. So he can't talk about politics. He can't talk about the economy. He can't talk about, philosophy, because he hasn't developed that language, right? In his first language, he kind of
Mm.
stopped, right? So we want to stop that process from happening. We want
Yeah.
students to keep developing, and with the SLT program, we do have that as
Huh.
an emphasis as well. Students are are going to be getting hands-on experience from their first semester. Every SLT course, they must take service learning. That's a third bullet here.
Mm-hmm.
They participate in service learning projects where they are tutors in ESL classrooms at KCC, in our college's study hub, where students in language classes might come for tutoring services, say like a student taking Spanish might need tutoring, and so one of our SLT students who speak Spanish would be their tutor in the tutoring center. And we have that kind of situation pretty regularly.
Mm-hmm.
So these students in the SLT program are getting tutoring experience and language learning experience and language teaching experience from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And part of our kind of a mission here, or one of our goals here, is to help students realize early on in their education, do they really want to be teachers? This is in response to data, national data that came out about 10 years ago that showed that we have such a high attrition rate within our teaching workforce, especially within ESL in the DOEs across the country, because teachers don't have the opportunity to practice what they're learning until their practicums, which really usually occur at the very end of their programs, right?
That
So
is
they'll
right.
spend years in school, even going through their licensing program, and then at the very end, they do the practicum. And at the very end, they're introduced to the reality of that high school class or that, elementary class.
And that's when reality sets in.
Yes, and then many times students at that point say, "Wow, I can't handle this," and so even the College of Ed has moved up its kind of practicum and experience opportunities to respond to this. So colleges all across the country have responded to this this finding.
Yeah.
So it was very impactful, and we in the SLT program decided to do this as soon as we created the program. We want our students in the first semester to know what it's like, and within 2 years, when you graduate from our program, you either know you want to be a teacher or you want to start looking at another option, which is totally possible at that point. But after investing 4 years of time and money and financial aid, maybe even, that's not the point where you decide you want to be a teacher.
Right.
So we have all these different career options, and we encourage our students, we advise them along the way to explore different options. If they do have a first language other than English, even though our emphasis is ESL, we're learning ESL methodology that really translates to other language contexts as well. We push them to not only do tutoring in English, but also do tutoring in their first language, so they can then graduate as a bilingual teacher, which is one of our objectives as well. We want to try to exploit students' background knowledge and experience as much as possible, and that's going to give them more career flexibility. If you graduate with a degree in second language teaching and you speak fluent Chinese and English, and you can teach both, well, then you're going to be positioned to get jobs locally and abroad. Yeah.
That is
so
cool.
We have these different degree options. We have the concentration in second language teaching, which is within our AA degree in liberal arts. That's our main degree. That's a transfer degree, as you know. And then we have a concentration in education in second language teaching, which is also within our AA degree. This is really targeting students who want to get into the College of Ed and want a teaching license. They want to work in the state DOE, whereas our just concentration in second language teaching is not really targeting those students exactly. It's targeting students who just want to be language teachers in any context, right? So the concentration in education and SLT is really a focused concentration to get students directly into the College of Ed. Then we have the AS degree in second language teaching. This is really for students as most AS degrees, are structured, who just want a 2-year degree. They just want to go to college for 2 years, get that certification that they can be a language assistant or a language tutor. Some of these students go on to be paraprofessionals within the state DOE. With a 2-year degree, you're considered highly qualified as a paraprofessional. You're a language tutor or teacher or classroom assistant, however you want to call it, but their category is paraprofessional. Then we have the Certificate of Competence in TESOL. This is a degree that is, or this is a certificate that students who might be taking like culinary arts or hospitality, they might want a secondary qualification in case they want to change careers later or just have more career flexibility. And this certificate can give them that background training. It also introduces them to the teaching field and just in case they want to explore this further later. The certificate has also then formed the basis of a partnership with the DOE to train in-service teachers, which I'll talk about in just a moment. So these are our different degree and certificate options. These are courses. We have 5 core courses within our program, and then we have these 2 additional courses that are really support courses, linguistics and classroom management. And so with this package of 7 courses, 29 credits, students earn the certificate in TESOL and really have a really firm foundation for which to build future BAs on or even a master's. Many of our SLT graduates have gone on to get bachelor's degrees in second language teaching and in elementary ed, multilingual learning in UH Manoa. And many of those graduates have gone on and gotten their master's. In fact, I just got an email yesterday from one of our local Korean immigrant students who has just been accepted into the master's program. Nice. So she wants to teach, and she emailed me yesterday just saying how proud she was that she was able to do this and how grateful she was of KCC for helping her. But her goal is to teach English and Korean within the state school system eventually. That's her goal. So, and she's working on her master's to be able to do that. She's awesome. She's going to be highly qualified. And those are the kinds of students who are out there and who can make a huge difference in our state school system if we just tap them from high schools and get them into our programs.
Yep.
We're aligned to the national TESOL standards, and we're also aligned to the Common Core state standards for ELA. All of our courses have done these alignments to the standards, and we've submitted our courses as a whole package to the Hawaii Teacher Standards Board, and the Hawaii Teacher Standards Board have approved our courses to meet licensing requirements, which was a major step for us to be able to, to have legitimacy within the state at that level, right? Not only do we have, legitimacy within the UA system as a program that offers degrees and certificates, but we also now are aligned to licensing board requirements.
Wow.
We have transfer agreements with the College of Ed, with the Second Language Studies Department at UH Manoa, with Hawaii Pacific University, and we also have worked with foreign language departments in Japan, in Korea, for example.
Wow.
And we also have a kind of a loose relationship with BYUH, although we don't have formal agreements with those additional language programs, but we do have direct transfer agreements with College of Ed, Second Language Studies, and HPU.
Nice.
Then we have a new agreement with the DOE, which we're really excited about. This is really addressing the needs of in-service teachers. The state has a requirement now that has actually been on the books for a while, but it's been reinforced in the last year, all DOE teachers are required to have 6 additional credits for explicitly working with ESL students, or ELs they're called in the DOE.
Mm-hmm.
And our program now is training DOE teachers to meet this licensing requirement, starting with ESL teachers within the DOE. So ESL coordinators within the DOE need more credits. They actually need licenses. And so we're working with those teachers, and we're also, like I said, filling this need that the DOE has to have more teachers meet these requirements. And so we have now, we'll be starting our 4th cohort in the fall of 2020. And we will, at that point, we'll have upwards of 75 DOE teachers within our program.
That's awesome.
At different stages of completing their TESOL licensing requirements.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the benefits are listed here, and I think that anyone who works with ESL students and knows the needs of the DOE can appreciate that this is a high need area,
mm-hmm.
and our program is trying to help out with this. So I want to end on just giving a little bit of a tease about this coming KCC, College of Education, and DOE initiative that we're working on. We've already discussed this with DOE administration. They're now working on it on their end. We're working on it on our end. But the initiative is to recruit SEAL of Biliteracy graduates. This initiative would fund the first years of college education for SEAL of Biliteracy graduates who want to become language teachers within the DOE. And so they would graduate from DOE high schools, go to KCC, complete the second language teaching program, and then transfer up to the College of Ed to pursue their degrees in elementary ed or secondary ed. These are high need languages: Chuukese, Marshallese, Ilocano, Spanish, and other Micronesian languages that will be probably the emphasis of this initiative, but will more than likely open it up to any language. But this is definitely the high need right now. So we're now working on how this will work. There's money involved, so it's a little complicated, but the goal is to have this initiative in place by 2021. Yeah. So we're really going to be looking at partnering with local high schools, particularly those who have education academies, to try to help identify these SEAL of Biliteracy graduates and get them into our programs. So thank you for listening, and thank you for the questions and
so
any other questions.
Yeah, so when you mentioned funding, and so and I think when they hear that word, they're gonna just probably jump all over that. So how does that look when you say there's funding for that SEAL? And so does it cover tuition? Like, what does that look like?
So the idea is that students who, in the future, students who have completed the SEAL of Biliteracy in the DOE, right? Then the DOE would fund part of the college experience, right?
Wow.
Education of these students. And then the UH system, through grants that we're in the process of starting to pursue, would also chip in, right? So this would be a joint venture between the DOE and the UH system to provide stipends, right? I think that's the usual model, is that these students, once they graduate, would be eligible once they graduate from high school, and they would be given a stipend to pursue this pathway. And part of it would be an agreement at the end that they would work for a minimum number of years within the DOE, which is pretty common, right? In these kinds of initiatives, students will get funding, but then they have to pay back, right, through through paid work, right? But they
Right.
just have to agree that they will get a job within the DOE, within their field, and they'll work for a minimum number of years.
Mm.
Otherwise, then they have to pay back the stipend basically as an interest-free loan, right, at that
Yep.
point.
Yep.
But you know, it's definitely an option. It will be in the future. An additional option among others that students have, you know, to pursue higher education.
So Sean, Sheldon and I, you know, in our work, we do a lot of outreach with the high schools, community partners or whatnot. And looks like you're doing a lot of outreach as well. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you have some type of summer bridge with high schools. Could you explain a little bit about that and how, I guess, how do people get involved with that?
We had been doing Summer Bridge, and we might be redoing this in the coming years. We suspended it last year because of we didn't have enough teachers to offer the program, and then this year because of you know, COVID-19 pandemic, we're definitely not considering doing this. But in the past, what we've done is offered a summer bridge program, a 4-week summer bridge program, where students have come to college, come to KCC for 4 weeks during the summer, and they've basically been apprenticed to becoming a college student. Usually we've tried to recruit students who are either between their 9th and 10th year in high school or 10th and 11th year in high school. So we're not targeting those students who are just graduating, right? So it's not like the gap summer between graduation and then college attendance. It's really for those students who are starting out their high school or in the middle of their high school period, to start having a vision of college, right? To think about college, you know, that's really what we had been targeting those immigrant students in high need schools, Farrington, Kaimuki, Waipahu, among others. Those were actually our 3 main target schools who had the most need. Few students would come from Roosevelt. But we did this for about 10 years. We ran the summer bridge, and last year we couldn't do it because we didn't have the staffing. And then this year, yeah, we hope that we can start it back up again. But that was a free program, and students, we had really, really good success rates. And students earned one what's it called? You know,
Elective credit, right? I think they got elective credit, right?
They got one elective credit, you know, for summer school, like that makeup credit that students can get. Yeah, and the high schools were willing to sign off on it, and we had great participation from Kaimuki. Was a great partner for many years. They sent many students, and Waipahu was great. They would even send a bus load every day.
I saw the bus. That was amazing.
Their kids on a bus, and they'd send them here during the summer every single day, pick them up every day, and they were paying for that out of their district budget, and the students really loved it. There were great success, and the whole focus, just as Tony explained, was emphasis on language development and writing, learning about college expectations, what it means to be a college student. So hopefully, Alfie, we can get this back going in the next year or so.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, Tony, Sean. Really appreciate it. I think I know the information provided is going to be very, very helpful for not only our community partners, but just people who help students who English is their second language. And there's a huge population out there. Any last words? Tony, Sean, any last words? No. All right.
Please get in touch if you have any questions. We're happy to talk with you all.
All right. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
And take care and wash your hands.